Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next segment of BuiltHow. Now, I have a great guest today that's a little unusual from the other interviews. We're going to shift gears for just a moment, where you've been listening to some of these great agents talk about how they built their business. So Joel Rico is not only a great real estate broker, investor, entrepreneur, he also is a coach for forward coaching. He teaches a very powerful program called Persuaded. And the reason I invited Joel today is, Joel, I think through your NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming training that you are able to do for our coaching clients, you truly are able to help them double, triple, in some cases even quadruple their listing success, right?
Yeah.
Because as you and I have discussed many times, the reason often that people lose a listing is they simply repelled their prospect, right? They didn't even realize
sadly.
it. They repelled their prospect.
Yeah.
So now you have an extensive background also, though. So you've trained thousands of agents and brokers. And I should mention that in your past life before real estate, you were an engineer. Now, does anyone ever stop being an engineer? Actually, right.
I'm still pretty sure I'm a nerd.
Okay.
I still think like an engineer for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
And so, and that is sometimes the agent's worst nightmare, right? The engineer that's difficult to deal with, very exacting. So I thought what we would do on our segment today is I want to give them some tips that they can take away and go apply to their next listing presentations. And Joel, one of the things you and I have often talked about, and I even wrote this down just so I wouldn't forget to bring it up, that there are a lot of people out there, coaches, gurus, selling their, quote, proven scripts to get listings.
Sure.
Now, not only are some of them at times 40 and 50 years old, which we all know today's savvy seller, not going to go for that.
Not going to work.
But also just abrupt, harsh, even confrontational, argumentative. And I heard that as you teach your Persuaded course, one of the things you talk a lot about is client-centric. So can you talk a little bit about what that means? Is there scripting and formatting their approach to a listing appointment?
Yeah. So I don't know if I made that word up or if I shoplifted it from somewhere. But I realized when I moved from engineering into sales that, as an engineer, like the stereotype, right? I was really smart. I was right. I had the numbers down. I was really exacting. Mm-hmm. And so I learned really quickly that there were people around me that knew me, that trusted me, my friends, my family, and they knew me as a smart, honest, ethical guy. And they said, oh, yeah, so please come sell my house. But once I got through those people, and then I had to interact with people that didn't know me, and I was still exacting and smart, and even I had all these experiences where I was right. I mean, I was right about the price. Mm-hmm. I was right about the market, but I still lost the deal. And so I kind of learned the hard way that even if I'm right, I'm doing my best to say, no, look, this is how it is. Look at these numbers. Let me show you. And I was working so hard to convince people to see that this is really what's happening. But the way I was speaking was not the way they were listening. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to let me show you how this is right for me. And I had this horrific collapse when I got into the business. I got through the people that knew me. And then as soon as I had to get outside to the people that didn't know me, I realized I was at such a huge disadvantage. Mm. There's people that are born to talk, born to sell, and that was not me. And so it dawned on me that I needed even though I was a smart character, and I can't do it anymore, but I used to amortize loans in my head. Mm-hmm. Not
now
anymore.
The money's practically free, so whatever, right?
Now we're getting close to 0% of that. Yes. I can do in my head. But I learned really quickly that I needed some help in communicating to people. There was so many experiences where I was right, I was honest, I gave them the right price, and they listed with that guy at a price that didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. I told them the truth. And so it just dawned on me that something was happening in my communication. Like I knew what was going on, but what I was saying and what they were hearing, it all got jumbled up somewhere. So I started studying everything that I could about language and communication. And in the process, I became NLP master, trainer, instructor. I'm a licensed hypnotist, all of that. So that was kind of the long way around. Your question was, what does client-centric mean? So client-centric is a perspective, right? It dawned on me as an engineer, like these people are not looking for a dog and pony show. They're not picking their agent based on an infomercial, which is the way I thought selling worked. But what they're really looking for is they're looking for somebody to represent them. And so what I had to say, even if I was accurate, was coming from my perspective. And so it just dawned on me that what I think and my opinions, even if my opinion's right, that's not about them. And so I started really learning how to listen and ask questions. And I want the conversation to be client-centric. I want it to go everything about the client. And, I want to answer their questions, but I want it to be driven by them. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think of some of the things from your course that are important. One is really thinking about your prospect and who are they? And of course, if they are an engineer, they're going to want more data, right? Yeah. And if they're not an engineer and they're that very amiable relationship type of person, yeah. If you go in because you're an engineer and shove that data at them, yeah. It's an immediate disconnect.
Yeah, right? Immediate.
Even things, so really thinking about who are they? I often tell our coaching clients, ask them what they do for a living. Yeah. Right? How often is that an indicator? And then the choice of words. Let's talk a little bit about that. The choice of the words, how that can really cause a breakdown, and the tonality of how certain.
Yeah, I think so. This might be a tiny bit esoteric, but there's a quote from Lao Tzu, which is this Chinese philosopher. And he says, the quote is that a bird is to air as a fish is to the water, as people are to themselves. Mm-hmm. So what that means is the fish has no idea it's swimming around in water until you hook it and lift it up out of the water. And he's like, holy cow, this isn't water. But we're the same way. Mm-hmm. I think all people are doing the best they can. I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be courteous. I'm trying to be helpful. But, maybe I'm stepping on somebody's toes. Maybe I interrupted them and I missed it. So, what I think is the perfect delivery might not be the perfect delivery for them. And here's a great example to really let it sink in. So for everybody listening, I'm talking to Debbie because she's here on the screen, but Debbie already knows this. So, for everybody listening, when you get a phone call and it's your buddy, how do you answer the phone? Hey man, what's up? Right? When your grandmother calls, how do you answer the phone? Right? Different for my grandmother, because those relationships are established. So when my grandmother calls, I don't go, yo, granny, what's happening? I don't do that.
Or the $1 million seller on a listing appointment. How do you answer then? Right?
Exactly. So, what's the right way to answer? Well, if I know who's calling, then we have some relationship in mind. And we have some relationship history, so I have some sense of where we are. Mm-hmm. But the trick with real estate is we're calling new people all the time. Right. Pretty much every time you pick up the phone, there's a stranger on the other end. So what's the most appropriate way to get quick in rapport and get connected to that stranger? What do I say? Well, I don't know that there's a right answer, but the closest answer is how they are, right? So if I'm making expired calls and I get a little old lady that sounds like my grandmother, I'm going to soften up a bunch and say, I'm calling about the house on Myrtle Avenue.
And if you get a high D like me that says, yes, what do you need?
Yeah, and if I call, if this would never happen, but if Debbie's house expired, it would never happen because it's Debbie. So if your house expired and I called and said, hey, I'm calling about that house, you go, yeah, what do you want? Right? Because Debbie's super high D and straight to the point. Yeah.
I wrote something down though too. I thought to give them something to really take away that would be super practical. You do a listing appointment. It's
Yeah.
going great. And you're at that moment where you're going for the signature, you're going for the commitment. And they say, well, Joel, it's been great. We've really enjoyed meeting you. We can tell you're an awesome agent, broker. We just need to think it over. Can you just give us just a little time and we'll be reaching back out to you soon?
Sure. So consider, is this really the question? So it's kind of weird talking to Debbie because I know Debbie knows all this, but I don't get to see everybody else just yet. So yeah, that question is an interesting framework, right? And so we need to think about it. So the question is that really true? Do we need to think about it? When you leave, are they going to hold hands and have a seance? And probably not.
Right.
So the question is, why? Like, what is it that they have to think about? Mm-hmm. And was there something that went wrong? Mm-hmm. So I have a couple of thoughts about that. If you're at that place at the end of a listing presentation, my guess is that you ran out of rapport somewhere. I'm going to say me. I was talking too fast. I was talking about something that wasn't relevant to them.
Said something that turned them off.
I could have said something that turned them off.
Mm-hmm.
I could have gotten off track. I could have brought up something that was irrelevant. Mm-hmm. They could have told me something that I missed and they think I'm not listening. At some point in that presentation, I lost rapport and I moved into like convincing. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the biggest things that's changed the whole world in which I teach this course and relate to people is I don't try to convince anybody of anything. Like I want them to convince me. Right? I want to say, okay, so you want to sell the house. Great. And you're interviewing me. Great. So what if we don't get this price? Right. And you're wanting a price 100,000 more than the best comp. How am I going to sell this? How do I convince people to pay 100,000 more for yours than that one? Like I'm going to make them do all the heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. And so at the end, when they say we need to think about it, I don't know. Do they really need to think about it, or is that a technique to politely get you to exit? So what I want to figure it out. Right. I want to say, oh, good for you. Yeah, it's a big decision. Take their side. Always take their side. Yeah, that's a big decision. Huh? I'm curious. What specifically do you need to think about? Is there anything that we covered that you have a question on? Is there something we should have covered that we didn't spend time on? So where is it that you are not 100%, feeling good and committed? So I'm just going to keep, on it.
And dig in. I think the important thing.
My job is to solve it.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's really not about pitching. It's digging in, finding the problem so we can offer a solution.
I think that's the key.
There's so many things I wish we had more time for because you just covered, did we have the wrong approach? Did we say something that offended them? Did we move from being engaging and interactive to winding up for the pitch at the end and that turned them off? One other thing I would mention as well is sometimes it's just that transition over to the close.
Yeah.
Right? Because even as simple as saying, well, what do you think? That's not a close. Or, well, I really hope you'll work with me. Or worse yet, which
I wish I had time to break that down because that makes. I wish I had time to tear that apart because Debbie's role play just made the fur on the back of my neck stand.
Well, often though, agents will even say, now that you have the information, let me know when you're ready. So let's talk a little bit about that. A good transition. You've done an awesome presentation. Great rapport. You can tell they're right there with you. They're engaging, they're communicating. So Joel, now you're going to take them to sign that agreement. What do you do? What do you say?
That was the best setup ever, by the way. So two things. my job at a listing appointment is not to convince them to list with me. I'm not there to convince them and tell them I'm right and I got the right price and and you got to do it with me and I'm better than the other. I'm not there trying to beat everybody else. That alone takes me out of the competition.
Mm-hmm.
So my intention is not go get this listing. So my intention is there's some people that need some real estate help and they don't have somebody they know and love and trust like a regular. So I got in the door. So they're interviewing me because they don't have a friend in the business who's going to look out for them. And so I show up and all I want to do is solve it. So that's the old engineer kicking in, like,
Okay.
Oh, so what do you have and what's not working and what would you like and how soon and have you been pre-qualified and tell me about that. What's that going to do? All I want to do is figure out where are they? Where would they like to be? What's not working? What would work? And as we go through this exercise together, right? I'm not hog tying them in the back of the truck and driving them somewhere.
Right.
We're doing this together. And I'm asking them good questions because I'm curious like that. And they go, well, we're going to put this on the market for 2.8 million. And I'm going to go 2.8 million. Wait a minute. Let me look at my notes. Wow, that's not what mine says. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to explore openly and honestly, like with a good friend of mine. And if they're serious about moving, eventually there is no transition from the presentation to the close. Mm-hmm. We just talk and I go, okay, well, what do we do about that? Well, if that's the case, you need to be there by then and it's 30 days for escrow and a couple weeks to sell. That kind of looks like we should be on the market this week. Mm-hmm. Great. Is there anything else getting in the way? And I'm just
working through it with him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know what, like when I show up, I don't know if they owe 110% of the value of their house,
right?
Or if they need to get somebody else to sign off on it, or like I don't know what their situation is. So for me to go in and think I know what they should do is pretty arrogant. Instead, I go in and go, great, get me up to speed. So I know you live here. You said you want to move there. I know roughly what the neighborhood's worth. You have a first loan for this. Tell me what's the goal, and we just kind of work it out.
I've heard students of your class say it just lifted such a burden of pressure and anxiety away from me, even in their prospecting, right? Because it's not about forcing it. It's about getting on their side, engaging them in the conversation. What I encourage our coaching clients to do is when you open up that file or folder that you take along to have the discussion, well, the listing agreement can be right there, look to the left. This is a work in progress. It's a working document. Mm-hmm. I saw you take a little note and it reminded me of the classic order blank close where when they say something and you say, okay, well, let me just go ahead and make a note of that. Yeah. We want a home protection plan. We don't want to get sued. Well, all right, let me check a little box there. That way we don't forget. Yeah. And you just move on. And I often say, and I'll see what you think about this, don't ask them, when do they want to put the house on the market? Because they dread that. That's work. Instead, by when would you like your home sold to the right buyer? Because that's what everybody wants, right? Is to get that home sold to the right buyer. And then going back to your point, look to find what is a legitimate reason to spark urgency. Well, I'm in no hurry. Well, good for you. Then that means if we go ahead and start today, that gives me a lot of time to do an excellent pre-launch and preparation, gives us time to get the home ready, and we can really keep things calm and reduce the stress because there is no rush. Right?
So Debbie just shared a really brilliant perspective. So no matter what, we're in a hurry, we're not in a hurry. Mm-hmm. No matter what. Oh, that's great news. Right? We're not in a hurry at all. Oh, that's great news. Good. I hate it when I got 24 hours to do all this stuff. Oh, okay, good. I can really sink my teeth in and do a nice job. We'll set up this. I'm so glad that you're not going to put me under the gun like that. Mm-hmm. Right? No matter what it is. Oh, that's so perfect. I'm glad it's working out this way.
Because there really truly is a way that there always is some legitimate opportunity inside of whatever time frame. And I guess in our last minute or two together, the point I would like to make about persuasion language, about agreement and acknowledgement, is that it's not about manipulation at all.
No.
It's actually really quite the opposite.
It's the opposite,
really,
for sure.
about just leaving all yourself and baggage at the door and walking into to be there in the way that they need you to be there, that they can make a comfortable buying or selling decision, right?
Yeah.
So, it's the rocket fuel. It is, and people often say, well, is this good for new agents? Yes.
Yeah.
I was first introduced to it at the age of 18 by my broker. And back then it was a very remedial version of it. Good enough, though, to change the course of my thinking and really, I think, change my career.
I think
and then it's like, well, what if I'm a 35-year veteran? Well, I always say, if you're not taking 98.2%, then because 0.8, maybe you don't want those, but 98.2%, you can always beat your own personal best. So Joel, I know we're out of time with you, and I know people are going to ask about your course, Persuaded. We will be doing the course again in the first quarter of the year. Joel he has a set amount that he will accept into the course at a time. So if you'd like to be on the reservation list, have us notify you when that course is beginning and when we have a date. Just go ahead and email me direct, Debbie@forwardcoaching.com, and say, can you send me the info on Joel's next course? And I'll be happy to do that. So Joel, I hope we gave him a lot to think about, because while it is a rather complicated topic, you can start by just put yourself in their shoes, think about it from their perspective, engaging versus pitching, and just realize that if you're not careful, what you say can really cost you that listing. So that's why language is so important. So Joel, thank you for joining us. And I know they'll like to hear more from you in the future. All right, everyone, have a great next session. Talk to you soon.